I'm very excited to be able to share what we're doing with this course with you. And of course, we will be looking forward to any questions that you want to ask about what we're doing. First of all, let me introduce you to myself. My name's Peter Mabbott. For those of you who don't know who I am the Director of Studies for the college, and myself and a couple of my colleagues, we brought together this course together, pulled it together because we've been seeing we've been seeing a great movement towards a more integrative approach to psychotherapy. So the course is about understanding what IP is. And it has other things and other skills within it as well. Explore. My background was originally in psychopharmacology. I was with Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital, but I moved into clinical hypnotherapy and have never ever looked back. Been doing this since the early 1990s. So and I've also got a couple of my colleagues in here as well. I've got Riska, our course consultant, who say hello, Riska. You're a face, but they would like your voice.
Hi, everybody.
And Riska's here to answer questions about the course and about the thing that everything we're doing with that. And we've got Julian, who is in the background, who's keeping an eye on the technical side of things for us. So we're in good hands, that I know. But and it's lovely to see some faces, old and new. Some faces I think I haven't seen for quite a while. So hello, everyone. But let's make a start on this. As I say, please do ask questions. Those of you who know me know I like questions. And there's two ways of doing that. We can interact as human beings if you want to, and that's by using the raise hand facility, even when I'm presenting the PowerPoint I've got. And yes, you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint. So if you want to talk to me person to person, then use the raise hand facility. If you would rather just drop a question and type it in, then if you can use the Q&A facility at the bottom. We tend to now keep the chat for general chats, and the Q&A lets me know something's in there that is very much to do with what we're teaching. And yes, if you want to, with the Q&A, do drop in whereabouts you are, not in the Q&A, in the chat, whereabouts you are in the world, because I know we've got people from all over the planet here. So that's wonderful to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start my share. Now bear with me. Zoom has very much changed itself over the past couple of updates. So if I do look puzzled at one point, it's because they've moved one of the buttons that I'm used to being in a specific place elsewhere. So let's make a start. So our certificate in integrative psychotherapy. Basically, what's the purpose of the course? We've been developing it over a long period of time, specifically because of this new direction that psychotherapy is going into, and has been going into for a very long time. Psychotherapy, as everyone knows, is a very diverse way of working with people. It's a very diverse career path as well. So why did we pull this together? Well, that diversity has to be reflected in the way we carry out therapy. And we do realize that it's more than just looking at a person and the symptom that they have. It's looking at the person and also looking at the environment in which they live, in which they exist, in which their challenges, in which their hopes for the future are also based. And so we do explore that influence on therapy. You know, we might all be sitting thinking, well, actually, I do that already. Well, what we're doing is taking this down to very much deeper level. So we are looking at the social aspects, very much cultural, and we mean culture in a very broad spectrum here. We're looking at belief systems that are based around the social, the cultural, and other areas. Identity, what does identity mean? We're in a world now where there is a huge evolution on the concept of personal identity. Who am I? How do I identify? How do I identify? Can't ignore the sexuality aspect of this, nor can we ignore the concept of family or relationship within this. Excuse me, dog wanting in. And so we're looking and exploring all of these in in the context of therapy, the therapy journey, but also in the context in the way in which people hold on to their particular issues, their presenting symptoms, and the journey that they want to take to overcome these particular issues. So we all have our techniques. It doesn't matter which discipline our prime discipline is. We all have our techniques and approaches. These we really now need to be looking at within this whole social construct, the cultural construct, and so on. So that's part of where we're going with this. And in so doing, the point of this course allows us to pull different experiences together, to pull different therapy models together, an understanding of different therapy models. No, we are not teaching therapy models on this. We are looking at how we can bring whatever our diverse modalities are together in one approach to treat an individual client based on everything that we're talking about here, and the challenges that brings. Because remember, things like sexuality might have be very much influenced by cultural elements within the society that a person lives in. The family elements can bring in different ways of thinking about empowerment and so on. So we're looking at being able to help therapists look at a person and really look at that person, going down to a very potentially very deep level of understanding to hone down the therapy journey for them. And people often ask us, is this just part of something? Well, yes, this is, as I'll say, it is part of something, but it is a standalone course in its own right. So you don't need to have done any other courses that I will mention briefly later in a few moments in order to benefit from this course. It is a course in its own right. And, there are quite challenging aspects within it. But it is also part of our Advanced Practitioner Diploma in Integrative Psychotherapy award that we're giving. So it is a module. It's a required module. Not all the modules in this award, we'll briefly look at it in a moment, are required. But this one is a required module in that. And really emphasizing the fact, yes, people tend to know us for our training in clinical hypnotherapy. We do train in therapies other than clinical hypnotherapy. And this course is not a clinical hypnotherapy course. This course is open to anyone who's been trained in any form of psychotherapy. So people with a psychotherapy background, the broad spectrum, are able to come on board and benefit from this course. One of the nice things about this course is that bringing together people from different backgrounds, we're able to learn and to share from our different disciplines on this, different perspectives of thinking, which is one of the reasons that we bring this integrative psychotherapy course in, because there is no one way of thinking about things. Different disciplines have their different modalities and their different ideas and their different theories. And so we have, as a major part of this, we've got a sharing as we go through. So just to let you know what the APDIP course is, the Advanced Practitioner Diploma in Integrative Psychotherapy. It's made up of, as I say, several courses. The only course that we have that requires hypnotherapy in the background is the ABPP, or Addictive Behaviours and Psychological Pain course, which is very hypnotherapy oriented. The rest of them are open to any psychotherapy, anyone with the psychotherapy training from any background. So the ABPP will look at addiction from the hypnotherapy perspective and various elements of psychological pain. Then we've got our EMDR course, a very popular course, which is open to all psychotherapists. Again, all of these are individual courses in their own right. You do not have to think, oh, if I want to do EMDR, I've got to study for the APDIP. You don't. They all form a part of that journey if you do. The ego state therapy course, again, open to all psychotherapists. We've got the CBT course where we're looking at CBT skills with for all psychotherapists. So that is open to all psychotherapists, and the one that we're obviously talking about today, which is the Certificate in Integrative Psychotherapy. Now, if people are thinking about doing the APDIP, the requirement for that is that there are essentially 3 required courses: EMDR, ego state therapy, and the Certificate in Integrative Psychotherapy. Because we recognize not everyone who has done hypnotherapy, there is the choice then of the CBT course that we do, or the ABPP course if you're a hypnotherapist and want to do that. So essentially, you've got 5 courses and you need to do 4 out of the 5, first 3 of which are compulsory. So that's all I'll say about that, unless anyone's got questions later to ask me about that. So the delivery of the course, we're bringing in a slightly different aspect to the way we deliver the course because of the nature of what we're going to be doing with this course. So there are live sessions. Basically, we've got those being held at weekends. They are held at a time that should be accessible for just about anybody, no matter where in the world they are. It's live virtual. And we have, and each of those is 4 hours per day, fairly standard for the way we teach live. And there is an introduction session. It's an introduction to the course that's 1 hour, and that tends to be midweek. And some of you have met our learning zone, but we have a learning zone, and it's an online learning zone. And this is where we have pre-module learning for this particular course. So we have videos, we have quizzes, we have discussion groups within there. There is material to read, all sorts of elements that you have access to. And basically, this is space to have your pre-module learning. So before you go into each live module, you'll have gone through these particular, it's not onerous, but there are particular lectures or material we want you to read. And then when we come into the live sessions, you will have the background. You don't have to learn it rote, but you'll have the background to be able to then fully engage with the discussions that we're going to be holding during the live sessions. And because of that, this is about reflective learning. We're not didactic. We're not saying, right, you've got to learn this, this, and this. You know, the if you want to say the didactic element comes in the learning zone, when we're live, it's discussion. It's discussion about the points and the challenges people may feel, or how that will apply to a particular client or group of clients that we're bringing in at this point. The idea here is that we're saying, here is a model of integrative psychotherapy. Let's discuss this model. Let's see how it shapes to fit your, as an individual therapist, your particular approach to therapy, your particular client base, your particular disciplines that you are trained in. Because integrative psychotherapy is about the integrative nature of bringing stuff together, but it's also about the therapist and the way they like to do therapy. It's also about the client. So there's a lot to discuss and work with within this. And it is challenging. The material we're presenting is deliberately challenging. And the live sessions provide a safe space to be able to discuss personal issues relevant to the issues we discuss in class. We don't pull punches. With this, you know, we present it live and raw, and part of our learning as people and as therapists is to be able to discuss the issues that are raised by the work that we're going through. And it is very much, of course, that one layer builds on the next, builds on the next, builds on the next. So, you know, over the 4 weekends that that we were training, you will find you start off with basics, layering it up, and then our last session, we are basically pulling it together. So stuff that we refer to on the first module, on the last module, we'll be going back to that and really evolving that. You'll see in a minute, because I'll break down the modules for you. As with everything we do, there's an 80% live attendance requirement. We do prefer, obviously, 100%, but we understand life happens. We also, as you know, this session's being recorded. Live sessions are all videoed. We do record them, and these are there for you to refer to later if there's something you think, what was being said at that point, or oh God, someone made a really important point there, can't remember it. So that's what the video sessions are for. These do not replace live attendance. The point of this course is the live discussion that we are encouraging within it, and the live debate within it. But you have that access to that information. And the course is examined through continuous observation, what you're doing in class, and also a final MCQ, just to make sure you've got the concepts within this. And as I say, you've got the whole element here because, you know, these sessions are live video, they're recorded. We are asking you to share your experience. We bring in an element of clinical supervision within it, so share your clients. Because of that, we do strictly maintain confidentiality. So the live sessions will not and are never shared outside your course. So the only people who get to see that live session will be your course mates. So it's not taken out and then used for everyone else to see. So again, it's part of the safe space that we create. So the module overview. So the first module that we have is the introduction to IP. And so we're looking at things like the 4 pillars of psychotherapy, things like CBT, psychodynamic work, humanistic work, and the systems approaches. We've also got the 4 pillars of integrative psychotherapy, which are things like theoretical integration or technical eclecticism. I always find it difficult there. Common factors, and also the assimilative integration. And following in with the big movement in medicine at the moment, we cannot talk about integrative psychotherapy without thinking about lifestyle medicine and the 6 pillars there. And prior to coming into this meeting, I was meeting with doctors, and again there was a big consensus about the importance of lifestyle medicine across the globe, and what that means, from conventional medicine bringing non-medics into the appropriate element, into the appropriate approach to treatment. So lifestyle medicine looks at nutrition, it looks at physical activity, it looks at sleep, it looks at relationships and social context, it looks at stress management, and it also looks at substance abuse. So those are the pillars around which integrative psychotherapy is taught. And we look at, to begin with in that first module, an integrative psychotherapy session framework. The nature of integrative psychotherapy is we cannot just say, right, you do this, and this. We give the concept of a framework here, and then by the time we've gone through the course, we revisit the framework in the context of the information that you've learned on this course as it applies to you, the therapist. We recognize your individuality within this, based around everything that we've been teaching with regard to thinking about working with our clients on this course. On module 2, we look at cultural intelligence in therapy, and this is bringing in religion, spirituality, and other elements here as a very important facet of multicultural therapy. And it really is, we operate in a global world. It's interconnected. I know I can only speak for myself, but my therapy practice is very multinational. I see people in many different countries with many different cultural backgrounds, and so that has to play a very important role in the way I work as a therapist. And so this element of cultural intelligence is something that we are very strongly bringing in here. So how it applies to integrative psychotherapy. We're looking at things like the biopsychosocial and the mind-body-spirit assessment tools, ways in which you can work with your client to be able to question your client about their various elements of their cultural background without being overly seeming to be too intrusive and without risking offending a particular client, because the wrong thing said at the wrong time might trigger offence that we haven't become aware of. We will just have a reminder of the meta model. For those of you who've done it before, those of you who haven't, we'll talk about what the meta model is and the ways of questioning. And also looking at culture-focused questions in our client intake, and in the I always prefer to do these things face-to-face in my taking of the case history at that first and subsequent sessions. You don't necessarily get everything about the client in that first approach. We've also got module 3, there are 2 parts to that one, the influence of race, gender, and sexuality in therapy. So that's split over into 2 parts. What we're looking at here, part 3, module 3, is about personal identity. Within therapy, always remember this is in the context of psychotherapy. So we are looking at 3 words that people quite often, therapists, we probably do think more deeply about it. But the 3 words, sex, gender, and sexuality, understanding what's meant by those in an objective, from an objective perspective. That's where we bring it in. We understand there are lots of sexual politics out there, gender-related politics and so on. We have to have an objective overview of what is meant by this, because we have to look at it, we have to understand it, and then we can understand our clients within the context of their beliefs around this particular area. So we're looking at sex, we're looking at gender, what sexuality means, the different styles and types of relationships that are out there, sexual relationships, what sexuality means, what gender identity means. So that we're explaining. We're looking at how we as therapists can manage these issues in therapy. So if something comes up, an issue with regard to a person's gender, identity, sexuality, or anything else, how do we manage those in the context of me as a therapist who may not understand their identity? So how do I manage that? And how do I manage the way I conduct therapy with that particular person based around that? Also, the issues surrounding sexuality and gender. So, yes, we need to have an even deeper understanding so we can look at what those things mean, but the issues, the deeper issues, and have an exploration of those. And also managing issues of race within therapy. So we explore that racial side of things, but also we're looking at addressing an area of race that often gets swept under the carpet. We're looking at things like microaggressions and racist comments within the psychotherapy arena, as therapists becoming more aware of those microaggressions that could come into this, and innocent comment that actually can be quite racist for somebody who is not of a particular racial background the person giving the comment is from, and how that relates within that. We're also very much looking at family within this. So module 4 and 5, 2 parts to that. So part 1, we're looking at genograms and the systems approach. Part 2, we're looking at this thing called the imago. So this is where we're taking the client and placing them into a wider social construct, but also not just that. With the genograms and systems approaches, we're looking at a wider historical familial context as well. So looking at the pathway, the attitudes and influence, etc., have come in, that have been a part of the development and maintenance of a particular presenting symptom, and that can be a part of the overcoming that particular symptom. So that's what we're looking at here. So we are looking at understanding and creating genograms, creating that pictorial understanding of where the client is within the concept of the family history. And also within that, bringing in the systems approach and looking at not just the layout of where the client has come from, but also the influences, the systems that have been created within the family that goes back a few generations within that, because you cannot just take the here and now as being representative. It's also useful, might not be useful, but it's also useful if we can see the history of where certain beliefs and attitudes, behaviors, relationship issues come in. We'll also be looking at this thing called circular questioning, how to bring that in order to explore the interconnectedness you're seeing with genograms and systems approaches. But it's not just that. We're going to look at the imago. Basically, it's the relationship template that every one of us forms based around unconscious observation of significant attachment figures, i.e. parental figures, and other significant attachment figures have demonstrated to us in our early formative years. So the imago is based on, we unconsciously pick up on relationship patterns that we see our parents engaged in, or we see other significant family members engaged in. And that sets the template for our present day relationships. So we learn how to conduct ourselves within the relationships, imago therapy posits, by observing our parents. And it's about looking at that and what we as therapists can do within that concept. So we bring in the idea of imago dialogue, which helps the client to understand better what's going on in their past, or where they've learned these particular issues. And all of this, yes, we're bringing this in, but we also want to be able to discuss it and the relevance it has within your own particular therapeutic model that you practice, and where that comes from, or how that can help your client. And you can't go anywhere within this pathway without thinking about attachments. And specifically here, yes, we'll talk about attachments, but we want to look at the role of these attachment styles and the area called attachment trauma that comes in, and what we can do with regard to that. So we're looking at this within that context within the context of psychosocial issues. How attachment and attachment related traumas are affecting the way in which we interact socially, how we're interacting within our own inner world with the world around us. And because we like a little bit of science, just a little bit about bringing in the effect of attachment trauma on the brain, because when you look at these things, you understand a little bit about the neurology. Don't worry, it's not a huge part of it. It's just an overview and an understanding. But we look at the neurology of what's going on up here, what attachment trauma does, which then you can see, it's an interesting debate about the cascade effect that we are the end point of, looking back historically at where this came from. So, and why it is affecting people so strongly. And then the last part of the course, which is the last module, is consolidation. And this is what I said, we go back to module 1, start at the, go back to the very beginning again. So module 1, where we're looking at the template, we want to start revisiting that template, based around what you've learnt on the course. The course is, it's modular, but one module follows another, so you're layering in your knowledge and skills based on what went before. What we want to do is say, right, here you've had all this information. Now, how is that relating to your particular therapy discipline, no matter where it comes from, and how that will perhaps influence a decision to look at other therapeutic disciplines in the future if you wanted. And as I say, we'll look at your own way of creating your own template from everything you've known, and we give you the opportunity. We will give a case history, and it is a complex case history, where you'll get the opportunity to discuss that in the context, obviously, of integrative psychotherapy itself. So the whole journey through the course is about building up knowledge, understanding, a deeper understanding of our clients that perhaps we haven't delved into before, or it just hasn't been on our mind because that's not potentially an issue that's of relevance to us. But what we're doing is looking at that, bringing that up to give wider understanding of the client, the way the client is creating and maintaining problems the way we as an individual therapist, irrespective of our discipline, can bring that understanding to help our clients based on the various therapy techniques that we have. So there's a lot of thinking, a lot of discussion that goes on with the course. Just so people know, we have a variety of accreditations and approvals. We've got, to be quite fair, we've got quite a lot of interest from a wide range of different sources in this course and in the APDIP level training. So we do have a robust background. The people who are teaching this course are all very highly experienced therapists, senior lecturers, and who are also there to essentially help you open up some of the more challenging discussions that can come from the material that we have here. So, anyone got any questions? I know I've thrown a lot at you. Anyone want to share with us what your interest is in integrative psychotherapy? Anyone want to have a go at letting me know? Anyone? One of my familiar faces? Anyone want to share? Ali, you are one of my familiar faces.
I'm really interested in this because the things that you're touching upon, I'm finding are coming up in therapy all the time, because you can't start to unpack and do what works for a person without unearthing all of these things. So yeah. I'm really looking for something that gives me a framework and which just gives me a set of tools, which might be things that I'm doing anyway, but I'm doing without the, you know, the background of science and knowledge and learning behind me. So I'm really looking for that frame, and I think it provides that. So it's quite exciting.
That's why I'm so excited by the course. Yes, of course.
Can I just ask, in terms of building up for the practitioner diploma, previous courses that have been done, like in EMDR with yourselves, do they count, or is there a sort of time limit on them? Can they
No, they count.
Okay,
they count. They count, definitely. So yes, we have an APEL process. Wonderful. Anyone else like to share? Of course, Riska is a point of contact for you all, and I'll happily speak to everyone. And if she doesn't know the answer, hello, she'll contact me and we'll sort it out. Anybody else? Because one of the things, you know, again, I'm saying I'm looking at the number of people I'm seeing here, and from different areas of the world. And it is, again, one makes assumptions about one's own culture that one assumes everyone else's culture understands, and others will make their assumption about my culture. And that is something, when I first traveled to Malaysia, I stumbled at one point, because I was doing some work helping out in the University of Malaya Hospital with some pain management work, and had a client who, when I asked them to describe their pain to me, told me it was sour, which was a descriptor. I had no idea what they were talking. I knew they were talking about something, but for me, it's not a cultural descriptor of pain that I could relate to. And so through that interaction and discussing with the client, I learned a different way. I now fully understand that element. Again, with things like simple issue of colour. When I was first down in Malaysia, again, I use this because this is what really my journeys to Malaysia, to South Africa, when given a few talks in South Africa and other countries, when I remember sitting in a restaurant with my colleagues, and I looked at a house festooned in white opposite the restaurant, and me with my little ignorant Western understanding and my cultural references, the only cultural reference I had, I was sitting there saying, "Oh, isn't that lovely? There's a wedding going on over there," and my colleagues were saying, basically laughing at me, and said, "No, Peter, that's a funeral house," because I hadn't realised that part of the culture in Malaysia, the colour white was the colour of mourning. And so I learned a huge element there. So, and we're moving as well into a more spiritual way of interacting with our clients. I don't know if any of you've noticed that, but since the dawning of the age of Aquarius, since basically 2000, more and more people are bringing up their spiritual understanding and spiritual background. And again, we have to acknowledge, listen to, and work with that. So, and the context that comes from within therapy and the history of the client. So, so that's an area we do explore. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to ask, or like a little bit of enlightenment?
Yes, Peter.
Hi.
Hi, Kelvin here from Malaysia.
Hi, Kelvin.
Yeah, it started all just
there you are.
reflecting on my journey. Started with the desire to help people, people around me. Then it moved on to just like in medicine, they have the patient welfare. So we have our client welfare. So we have the client interest in our heart. So also on a client-centered, we're moving into, I learned about client-centered in the rapport and things like this. And what we are looking is what is the best for our client and how best to help them. So sometimes it's not just a technique, but in our rapport. If I don't understand the culture, the gender, I can say words and things that will just be very distasteful to the client. So there are things like taboo that you mentioned. If you ever wear a red color to a funeral, then it's very offensive. So things like this that you need to know.
I wouldn't wear this tie.
This is not so bad because it's a dark red, but they're the bright red. Okay. But then they're also very confusing. But if the person who passed away is 100 years old, then you are allowed to wear red because it's no more mourning, but it's celebration of a long life. It's a blessed life. So there is that difference in culture. And then the meta we use, the words that we use in one culture is different from. Like in our culture, we will associate, I know in certain culture, they will associate pain with sour. But in my culture, we associate pain with bitter. Because words like it's a bitter life, hardship and things like that. So I think we are moving more towards the therapist we want to be humble. First of all, we want to be humble and we want to be holistic. And we want to find the best, it's like a maze. We want to find the best passage to bring the therapy to the client. So to me, it's like, it's a challenge, it's like a game. Which is the best? There are many routes to deliver the technique. But which is the best route, the softest, the safest, and then I learned, we learn in course on utilization. We use the route of utilization. If the person wants to sleep, then we sleep with him in the trance. If the person wants to open his mouth, we bring him, we accept that. open your eyes and we still can bring it to trance. If the person wants to talk or wants to listen to music or whatever the person, and we utilize that. So it's also part of the theory of utilization. So that's my understanding and contribution to this.
Also, one of the things I think that is really important to reflect on is not just about our clients, but also the enrichment as therapists and as human beings we get from this. My becoming a therapist opened my eyes to a lot of things and opened the world up to a lot of things, but also then moving into the more eclectic, culturally based elements within therapy, it really enriched my life by being able to go and challenge myself. And therapists need to be challenged. We really do, because it keeps us fresh. It keeps us on the ball. It keeps us focused on the best for our client. And that's what I feel part of what we do within this course, the discursive nature that we're doing. It's allowing us to reflect as therapists on who we are and what we have to give and what we have yet to learn about others. We talk all the time about unconditional positive regard, but we don't really quite often understand when we really think about it what that means. And that does mean challenging ourselves. You've got elements there. You don't, I've always used this particular client that I had. One of the first things that they said to me, was trauma-based, he was a trauma client. One of the first things to me he said was, all women are sluts and they deserve what they get. Literally, that's what he said. Someone said that to me in a pub, I would probably be in a massive argument. But I had to step back from that. And that, quite frankly, offensive statement, sexist statement, violent statement, and explore what he meant. And through that exploration, took us down layer by layer by layer by layer to the fact that he had spent a life from childhood right through to adulthood being emotionally abused by women. So then the context comes in. So looking at his history, looking through the genogram, looking through his imago as well, I could see where his issues had come from, and he then got insight into that as we were exploring it, and B, through the genogram, through the imago, he could then see how he could change. So they're templates. They're not, and yes, they could say you're programmed to be like that. But if you can program, you can reprogram. And that's the whole thing. But also it got me to challenge a preconception. If somebody says something like that to me, I'm like, rrr. But as a therapist, I had to step back. I had to think it through and think of what the message was that was being given to me, which wasn't necessarily the message that I took on board here. Some basic meta modeling with regards to that, but this was much deeper and had a huge emotive element to it. And so it's understanding, pulling those in. How do we put this into the context of the therapy process we take? Are you counseling? How does it come into that? Other psychodynamic psychotherapy, ACT, whatever it might be, hypnotherapy, they are all influenced by the client that we have sitting in front of us, the spiritual nature of it, religion. They're all part of a person that we have to take into consideration. Anybody else got anything they'd like to ask or share? Okay. Riska, is there anything you'd like to say before we complete? So Riska's there, your point of contact.
No. Thanks, Peter. I can just reach out. I've left my email in the chat and my telephone numbers. I can just reach out if they're interested. I have sent an email prior to this meeting, so please check your inbox and spam.
Wonderful. And
Yes, Peter. It also personally it challenged me on my discriminations. I'm from a particular religion. My course, in the practice, I have to deal with. I mean, somebody brought us. One of my classmates from another religion brought up a presenting symptom. Okay, she's from the religion that require her to pray 5 times a day, and so she struggled. She only could able to pray 3 times a day, so it's a performance anxiety. So for me, from another religion, I have to help her to achieve her goal in her religion to achieve. So that brought me totally. I can't imagine myself doing that. So it breaks away my discrimination, and maybe it makes me more inclusive. That the empathy and the non-judgmental. As a therapist, I'm sitting on a chair that is that don't allow me to many things. So of course, it's the empathy, I think, in the end.
Ultimately, it's the empathy, the relationship we build.
And then trying to wear, in my culture, we're trying to go into the person's shoe. I think in one of your lecture, you said to see things from the person's perspective rather than my perspective. And in that, I learn to be neutral, and I'm able to experience all my clients' experience. So you widen my experience that I'm not me alone, myself, and experience, but there's so many more experience that other people are experiencing, the problem that they are going through that I cannot understand. And I go down to wear their shoe.
That's a very important part. We understand at a very, very different level. So through challenging our own perspectives, our own prejudices that perhaps even as therapists we are unaware we hold, because they have become culturally ingrained into us. And that's something I'm very aware of. One has to look different levels of what I have, as what I've been trained in as a therapist, but also my upbringing. I was born in 1960, so I came from a very, very different historically culturally different background. So yeah, it really does enrich our own lives, and in so doing we enrich the lives of other people, which I've always said. But it is difficult. It is a challenge to challenge yourself and to be able to step back and say, actually, I hold these prejudices, I hold these attitudes. You can only do something brilliant for us. So lovely to see you all. Look forward very much. Hopefully seeing you all again at some point. Hopefully seeing some of you on our other trainings. We have some really exciting new courses coming up. We've been in a very heavy course evolution and development process. So as they become available, we will let you know. So look, I'll say thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a lovely weekend coming up, and see you all again really soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.